The camera slowly glides across a penthouse high above the city. From the outside, it looks like a palace in the sky. Glass walls, glittering lights, every sign of wealth money could buy. But inside, it feels empty. The living room is silent, too perfect, too polished. No toys scattered on the floor, no laughter. Just cold marble floors and giant windows showing a city alive below, while this home feels like it has stopped breathing. Two little wheelchairs sit by the window. Inside them, the twins stare out blankly. Their eyes follow the cars, the people, the life they cannot touch. They don't speak. They don't smile. They just sit, like dolls placed carefully in display cases. Across the room sits their father, Richard Whitmore, a man once feared in boardrooms and admired in magazines. Now he looks like a statue of himself. The suit still sharp, posture still strong, but his soul is somewhere far away. In his hand he holds a photograph, a smiling woman with the same bright eyes as the twins. His late wife, the only person who ever made this place feel like a home. She's gone, and with her it feels like the light left too. The camera lingers on his face. No tears, just grief locked deep inside, the kind that hardens a man. Around him, the ticking of the clock feels louder than life itself. This is not a home. It's a fortress of glass and stone, filled with wealth but starved of warmth. And inside it live three people: a father who lost everything he loved, and two children who have never known joy. The heavy elevator doors slide open with a quiet chime, and for the first time in years, someone new steps into the Whitmore penthouse. Emily doesn't look like the other nannies who came before her. No clipboard tucked under her arm, no stiff uniform, no sharp eyes scanning the room like they're here to manage patients. Instead, she carries nothing but a small canvas bag and a gentle smile. Her footsteps are soft against the marble, almost hesitant, as though she knows she's walking into a house made of glass, where every sound echoes like thunder. But then she does something unexpected. She hums. A low, warm tune. An old lullaby, the kind you'd hear from a grandmother rocking a baby to sleep. The sound doesn't belong here, not in this cold fortress of silence, but it spreads like sunlight across stone. The twins, sitting by the window, turn their heads. Not quickly, not with excitement, just a slow, careful glance. Curiosity flickers in their eyes, something the house hasn't seen in years. Emily kneels beside them, lowering herself so she's not towering over their wheelchairs. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't push. Instead, she pulls a tiny wooden bird from her bag, painted in bright colors, and sets it gently in the palm of one child. "Do you hear it?" she whispers, still humming. "Birds don't sing because they have answers. They sing because they have songs." The children don't respond, not with words, but for the first time, their eyes follow her. Their silence isn't rejection. It's watching. It's listening. And in that small, fragile moment, the frozen air of the penthouse begins to shift. For the first time in years, this house of grief feels something new. Hope has entered. The penthouse is quiet, as always. Afternoon light spills across the floor, soft and golden, but silence hangs heavy in the air, until Emily does something no one else dared to try. She claps her hands, once, twice, then again, faster, Her palms become a drum beat, and her voice hums a playful rhythm. At first, the twins only watch her with wide, uncertain eyes. No one has ever treated them like this before. Not like fragile glass, not like patients to be managed, but like children meant to play. Emily leans closer, her grin mischievous. "Your turn," she whispers, tapping the armrest of one wheelchair in time with her claps. Slowly, hesitantly, small hands move. A beat, then another. Off rhythm, but real. Alive. The sound grows. Claps, taps, and her humming weaving together into a rhythm that fills the once dead room, and then, like a crack of sunlight breaking through storm clouds, it happens. A giggle. Small at first, fragile, like it doesn't remember how to exist, but Emily sees it, laughing with them, clapping louder, sillier, until both twins can't hold it in. Their laughter spills out, bright, unrestrained, echoing against the cold marble walls. At the doorway, Richard freezes. He had come only to remind Emily of the rules, to warn her not to expect much, but the sound stops him in his tracks. His children, his broken, grieving children, are laughing. For a moment, his cold mask slips. His hand tightens on the doorframe, his breath caught in his chest. The ice that has gripped his heart for years feels like it's cracking, just a little. Inside, Emily doesn't even see him. She's too busy clapping, too busy laughing with the children as if the world outside this room doesn't exist. And in that instant, Richard realizes something. This stranger, this unusual nanny, has managed to do in minutes what years of wealth, doctors, and specialists never could. She brought laughter back to his home. The house is wrapped in silence that night. City lights glitter through the tall glass windows, painting the nursery in soft shades of gold and blue. Emily sits at the edge of the twins' beds, her voice a low whisper. She isn't reading from a book nor following any therapy instructions. Instead, she hums an old lullaby, one that seems older than the walls around them, older than the sorrow in this house. Her voice is warm, steady, carrying a comfort that lulls the children into a state no medicine ever could. Peace. The twins close their eyes, their breathing slows, their tiny hands resting on soft blankets. But then, something stirs. At first, it's barely noticeable. A twitch, the faintest movement of a small leg beneath the sheets. Emily doesn't stop. She keeps humming, her voice wrapping around them like a blanket, her hand gently stroking their hair. Then it happens again. Stronger. A kick, a stretch. Richard, standing in the doorway, goes rigid. For a second, he thinks his eyes deceive him. His mind races. Years of failed treatments, countless specialists, every doctor shaking their head. It isn't possible. But it is happening, right in front of him. The twins' legs move, weak, trembling, but alive. Their bodies responding to something no science can explain. Richard's breath shudders, and before he can stop it, hot tears burn down his face. For years, he taught himself not to cry, to stay strong, to bury grief beneath work and silence. But tonight, the walls break. His hand covers his mouth as his shoulders tremble. Emily looks up at him, her voice never faltering. She meets his eyes, steady, calm, as if she knew all along that miracles don't come from wealth or medicine. They come from love. In that quiet nursery, with only a lullaby floating in the air, the impossible happens, and Richard
powerful, untouchable Richard falls to his knees, weeping not out of loss this time, but out of hope. The night is heavy with mist, the kind that softens the edges of the world and makes every shadow look alive. Richard trails behind Emily, careful to keep his distance. She walks with quiet purpose, her steps steady, as if she knows exactly where she's going. He expects her to head into town, maybe to some late-night errand. Instead, she turns down an old cobblestone lane, overgrown with weeds. At the end of the path rises a church long forgotten, its windows shattered, its doors half broken, its walls kissed by ivy and time. Richard frowns. Why here? Emily slips inside. Richard hesitates only a moment before following. Inside, the air smells of wax and old stone. Dozens of candles flicker in the shadows, casting trembling halos of light. A small group of people sit in a circle on the cold floor, their faces tired, lined with grief, yet somehow expectant. Emily steps into the center. She doesn't look surprised to see them. This isn't her first time. Slowly, she begins to sing. It isn't the kind of song one hears on radios or in grand halls. It is low, haunting, almost otherworldly. Her voice rises and falls like waves, filling the broken church with something that feels holy. One by one, the people reach out their hands to her. Emily touches them gently, an old woman clutching her chest in sorrow, a young man trembling with invisible wounds, a mother silently weeping for a lost child. And something happens. Richard's eyes widen as he sees it, not with sight, but with undeniable clarity. Their pain, their grief, their invisible weight, it doesn't vanish. It moves into her. Emily's shoulders shudder, her breath sharpens, her body carrying the heaviness of each soul she touches. But still, she keeps singing. Her voice never cracks, even as tears streak her face. Richard's chest tightens. He realizes with a shock, this is why the twins laughed again, why their legs moved, why there is light in their eyes. Emily isn't just caring for them, she is carrying them, taking their suffering into herself. In that candlelit ruin, surrounded by broken people and broken stone, Richard sees a truth more powerful than wealth or medicine. Emily is no ordinary maid. She is both healer and burden bearer, and every miracle she gives comes at a cost.
Richard waits for her outside the ruined church. The candles still flicker behind the broken windows, but Emily steps out alone, her face pale, her hands trembling as if the night itself has drained her strength. She stops when she sees him, her eyes widening. For a moment, silence hangs between them, the kind of silence that feels heavier than words. "You followed me," she whispers, her voice thin, more accusation than question. "I had to," Richard answers softly, his eyes locked on hers. "I had to understand." Emily exhales, shoulders sagging, as if she's been carrying the secret for too long. She leans against the stone wall, clutching her arms as though trying to hold herself together. "My grandmother taught me this. It isn't magic. It isn't a miracle. It's a curse, maybe? I take pain into myself, their grief, their sickness, their despair. It doesn't disappear. It becomes mine." Richard's chest tightens. "You mean every time you help someone?" "I suffer." Emily interrupts, her eyes glistening.
I carry what they can't. That's why I can't. She stops, her throat closing around the words. Can't what? Richard presses, stepping closer. Her gaze drops, her voice breaking. I can't let anyone love me. Love makes me vulnerable. It opens doors I can't close. If you let me in, Richard, you'll hurt me without even meaning to. Your pain will drown me. The confession hangs in the night air, raw and devastating. Richard stares at her, seeing not just the fragile girl before him, but the weight of 100 unseen battles etched in her soul. Then, slowly, he closes the space between them. His voice is steady, quiet, but carrying a promise that feels unshakable. Then let me share the weight. Emily shakes her head, tears slipping free. You don't understand. This isn't something you can just choose. It destroys. But Richard reaches out, gently taking her hand in his. Emily, I've lived surrounded by wealth and emptiness. For the first time, I found something real. If you carry the pain of the world, then let me carry you. Her lips tremble, caught between fear and longing. The night is thick with silence again, but this time it feels different, like the pause before something impossible, something holy. And in that fragile moment, Emily realizes, for the first time in her life, she's entirely alone.
The morning light spills gently through the tall windows of the Whitmore estate, golden and soft, painting the nursery in a glow that feels almost otherworldly. Toys lie scattered across the floor, the usual mess of childhood, but today the air is charged with something heavier, an anticipation no one dares put into words. Richard kneels on the carpet, arms outstretched, his eyes fixed on his children. The twins, delicate, frail things who had known more suffering than laughter, stand together, their tiny hands clutching each other for balance. Their faces are pale, but alight with a strange determination, as if they too can feel the invisible thread pulling them toward their father. Emily hovers near the wall, her fingers digging into her dress. Her breath is shallow, her body trembling. She had given too much of herself again. Richard could see it in her pallor, the faint shadows beneath her eyes, but she said nothing, only watched. "Come on," Richard whispers, his voice breaking as if the moment itself might shatter him. The room holds its breath. Then, wobbling, uncertain, the twins let go of each other's hands. Their little legs, once too weak to bear weight, tremble under them. And then it happens. One step, then another, shaky, fragile, but real. They stumble forward into Richard's arms, collapsing against his chest with squeals of laughter that fill the air like music. Richard gathers them close, his face buried in their hair, tears spilling freely down his cheeks. For the first time in years, his mansion echoes with a sound it had long forgotten: joy. Emily watches from across the room, her whole body trembling. Tears blur her vision, her lips parting in disbelief. She had seen her gift heal bruises, ease pain, even draw the sharp edge of suffering away. But this was different. This was a miracle made flesh. Her knees weaken, and she grips the wall to steady herself. Joy surges through her chest, fierce and overwhelming, yet laced with fear. Because with every miracle comes a cost, and she knows the price is already written in her blood. But in that moment, watching Richard hold his children, hearing their laughter ring against the walls, she allows herself one forbidden thought. Maybe, just maybe, love was worth the danger. The Whitmore estate had begun to breathe again. Where once the halls echoed with silence, now there were soft bursts of laughter, little footsteps, and the quiet hum of lullabies. But beneath the surface of that newfound joy, another tension stirred, something fragile, something dangerous. Richard and Emily moved around each other like shadows drawn by the same flame. A brush of her hand as she passed him the twins' blankets, the lingering moment when his gaze found hers and neither looked away quickly enough. At dinner, when she reached for a glass, his fingers accidentally touched hers, warm, steady, a touch that carried more meaning than words ever could. But as quickly as those moments came, Emily would retreat. Averted eyes, a polite smile, the kind of silence that builds walls instead of bridges. One evening, Richard found her in the garden, standing among the roses. The moonlight touched her face, softening the pain she tried so hard to hide. He stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Emily." His voice was low, thick with the weight of words unsaid. "Don't you see what's happening between us? I can't—" His throat closed. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." Her hands clenched around the folds of her dress. For a moment, she let his words hang in the air, trembling like fragile glass. Then she turned to him, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of longing and sorrow. "If I let you in," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you'll see the darkness I carry. And once you see it, you'll never look at me the same way again." Richard's chest tightened. He wanted to close the distance, to silence her doubts with a single embrace, but her pain held him back like chains. He could see the terror in her eyes, not of him, but of herself, of what her gift cost her every time she gave. "Emily," he began, but she shook her head, a soft plea in her expression. "Don't," she murmured. "Please, don't try to save me. I'm not sure there's enough of me left to save." And just like that, the invisible wall rose higher. Richard stood there torn apart. A man used to conquering everything, business rivals, impossible odds, even fate itself, was powerless against the fortress of her fear. He wanted to push past it, to demand she let him in, but love held him still, because love was also patience. Love was protecting her, even from himself. So he let the silence fall, even as it carved another wound in his chest. The garden remained still, the roses swaying in the night breeze, as two people who could no longer deny their hearts stood only steps apart, yet worlds away. The abandoned church, once cold and crumbling, now bursts with life. Richard has transformed it, not with money alone, but with intention. The broken pews are replaced with soft benches, the cracked walls painted with bright colors. The garden outside blooms with roses, lavender, and sunflowers, their fragrance carried by the evening breeze. Children who had once known only pain now laugh and chase each other among the flowers. Families gather in circles, some singing, some praying softly, others just holding hands in peace. At the center stands Richard, no longer the distant millionaire, but a man whose eyes shine with purpose. He moves among the people, not as their benefactor, but as one of them, helping a boy fix a toy, kneeling to tie a little girl's shoe, listening as an old woman shares her story. Emily watches from a distance, her heart aching and blooming at the same time. For the first time, Richard has built something not out of grief or profit, but out of hope, and the sanctuary breathes with it. The garden glows like a dream. String lights sway gently in the evening breeze, their golden shimmer dancing over the faces of children and families gathered in joy. Laughter drifts through the air, mingling with the fragrance of roses and freshly cut grass. At the center of it all, Richard stands, holding the tiny hands of his twins, both dressed in soft white, their faces glowing with innocence and hope. With the crowd watching, Richard takes a breath that trembles with emotion, then slowly lowers himself to one knee. His children giggle, tugging Emily closer. One of them, with eyes wide and earnest, whispers loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Say yes, Mommy." The words hang in the air like a prayer. Emily's hand flies to her mouth, her eyes already brimming with tears. She had carried so much pain for so long, always afraid to love, always afraid to be vulnerable. But now, surrounded by laughter, light, and the two children who once couldn't walk but now stand tall beside their father, she realizes this is not just love, this is home. Richard looks up at her, his voice thick but steady. "Emily, you've given us miracles. Now let me give you forever. Will you marry me?" The garden falls silent, waiting. Emily's tears spill as she nods, her trembling voice finally whispering, "Yes." The children throw their arms around her waist, squealing with joy, and Richard rises to embrace her. Cheers and applause erupt around them, the sanctuary they built now witnessing the greatest miracle of all, not just healing, but love.
The mansion, once a hollow monument to wealth and silence, now breathes with life. The echo of emptiness has been replaced by the soft patter of children's footsteps running down polished hallways, their laughter spilling into every corner like sunlight breaking through long shut windows. No longer does the house feel like a prison of grief, it feels like a home. Upstairs, Emily gently tucks the twins into their beds, smoothing the blankets with tender hands. They cling to her fingers, their eyes heavy with sleep, but filled with a quiet security they had never known before. She whispers a lullaby, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who finally believes she belongs. Just beyond the doorway, Richard leans against the frame, watching with a soft smile that says more than words ever could. Later, in the grand library that once stood cold and unused, Richard sits with the twins curled on either side of him, a book open in his lap. His deep voice brings the stories alive, and Emily sits nearby, listening with her head resting against the arm of the chair. The fire crackles, casting a golden glow over them all, wrapping the moment in warmth. This is the life they never thought possible. A life where sorrow has been rewritten by love, where miracles walk on 2 feet and call them Mommy and Daddy. For the first time, the mansion is not just walls and chandeliers. It is laughter, bedtime stories, and the promise of tomorrow. And as Emily meets Richard's gaze across the room, her heart whispers the truth she once feared most. She is no longer alone. Together, they are not broken pieces. They are a family.
5 years later, the world looks different, not because it changed on its own, but because 2 people dared to believe it could. The Garden of Possibilities, once just a dream in an abandoned churchyard, has grown into a movement that spreads across cities and countries. What began as one garden filled with laughter and second chances has multiplied into dozens more, safe havens where children play without fear, where families heal, and where broken hearts learn to bloom again. Richard and Emily walk hand in hand through the original garden, now a living symbol of hope. They're twins, older now, full of boundless energy, run ahead, their voices echoing with joy. The air is filled with music and laughter as families gather around, planting seeds, painting walls, and celebrating life.
On one side of the garden, a mural stretches wide, painted in bright, hopeful colors. It shows children walking, dancing, and smiling, their faces lifted toward the sky. Some of the painted figures hold hands, others carry books or flowers, each a reflection of the belief that no story has to end in despair. Emily stops to gaze at it, her eyes misting with pride. Richard wraps his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close as if to say, "We did this together." As the sun sets, casting a golden glow over the garden, Richard's voice carries softly, steady, and sure. Miracles don't fall from the sky. They come from hands brave enough to believe. And in that moment, with laughter ringing and love everywhere around them, the legacy of their story is clear. Hope is not just planted, it grows, it spreads, it lives on.